The stars had never seemed so cold to Captain Daniel Harper as they did that morning. He stood on the bridge of the ESS Vanguard, watching the endless void through the reinforced windows. His ship had been traveling through deep space for nearly 2 years, mapping new systems and looking for habitable planets. The crew of 200 people had become like family to him. They trusted him to keep them safe. Lieutenant Karen Blake sat at her station monitoring the long-range scanners. She had been doing the same job for 18 months without anything unusual happening. That changed in an instant. Her screen lit up with warnings and alerts. Her hands moved quickly across the controls, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. "Captain, we have something approaching," Karen said, her voice tight with concern. "It's moving faster than anything we've ever recorded. Much faster than our ships can travel." Daniel moved to her station and looked at the data. The numbers made no sense. Whatever was coming toward them was slowing down from speeds that should have been impossible. He had studied physics at the academy. He knew the laws that governed space travel. This thing was breaking those laws. "Put it on screen," he ordered. The main view screen flickered and then showed them what was approaching. Daniel felt his breath catch in his throat. The ship that appeared before them was massive beyond belief. It looked like it was made of crystalline light, with angles and shapes that hurt to look at for too long. The Vanguard was a big ship by human standards, but this alien vessel made it look like a toy. Commander Greg Patterson stood up from his chair, his face pale. "That thing is 10 times our size. Maybe more." Before anyone could respond, every screen on the bridge lit up simultaneously. Their communication systems activated without anyone touching them. A voice filled the bridge, cold and emotionless. It spoke in perfect English, though it was clear the words were being translated by some advanced technology. "Primitive species, you are the humans. We are the Krell Dominion. You have entered space that belongs to the civilized galaxy. You will submit to evaluation." Daniel stepped forward, even though he knew the aliens could not see him yet. "This is Captain Daniel Harper of the Earth Space Service. We come in peace. We mean no harm to anyone." The voice continued as if he had not spoken. "Your technology is crude. Your biology is weak. Your civilization is young and without value. You will be tested. If you fail, your species will be locked inside your home system forever. If you resist our judgment, you will be destroyed. You have 1 day to prepare." Karen's fingers flew across her console. "Captain, they're scanning us. Every system, every file, everything. I can't stop it." Greg moved to the weapons station. "Should we raise shields? Charge weapons?" Daniel shook his head slowly. "No, if they wanted to destroy us, we would already be dead. They're studying us like we study insects." The alien ship hung in space for another minute, pulling every piece of information from the Vanguard's computers. Then, without warning, it simply vanished. One moment it was there, filling their view screen with its impossible geometry. The next moment, empty space. Karen checked her sensors 3 times. "It's gone, Captain." Jumped to faster than light speed. "I've never seen anything move like that." Daniel sat down in his command chair, his mind racing. "Send a message to Earth, Priority 1. Tell them everything that just happened. Then get me every piece of data we have on that ship and that transmission." The crew worked in tense silence for the next hour, compiling reports and analyzing what little information they had gathered. The Krell ship had barely registered on their sensors. Its technology was so far beyond human understanding that their instruments could barely detect it. Greg brought a tablet to Daniel, showing him the analysis. "We managed to record some of their scanning frequencies. Our scientists will need years to understand this technology. Maybe decades." "We don't have decades," Daniel said quietly. "We have 1 day. Then they're coming to Earth." The message reached Earth 16 hours later, traveling through the network of communication relays that connected human space. It arrived at the United Terran Council headquarters in Geneva, where President Linda Morrison was meeting with her senior advisors. She read the report 3 times, hoping she had misunderstood something. She had not. An alien species had found humanity. They had judged humanity to be primitive and worthless, and they were coming to test whether humans deserved to exist among the stars. "Get me Admiral Jack Coleman," she said to her assistant. "And Dr. Helen Foster. Get me everyone from the Defense Committee and the Science Council. We have less than a day to figure out how to save our species." Within an hour, the council chamber was filled with the brightest minds humanity had to offer. Military leaders, scientists, engineers, and politicians all gathered to hear the recording from the Vanguard. They listened in silence as the cold mechanical voice of the Krell delivered its ultimatum. Admiral Coleman spoke first. We need to mobilize every ship we have. Every weapon, every defense system. We need to show strength. Dr. Foster shook her head. Did you hear what they said? Our technology is crude compared to theirs. They've probably been watching us for years. They know exactly what we can do. If we try to fight them with conventional weapons, we'll lose. A young engineer named Peter Grant raised his hand from the back of the room. He worked at the Mars shipyards designing new propulsion systems. Most people in the room did not know who he was. What if we don't fight them the way they expect? He said. President Morrison looked at him. Explain. Peter stood up, nervous but determined. The Krell said they've done this before. They evaluate species. They test them. That means they have a process, a system. They probably do the same thing every time because it works. Advanced species think in patterns. They rely on their technology and their experience. And your point? Admiral Coleman asked impatiently. My point is that we're not an advanced species. We're primitive, remember? That's what they called us. Maybe that's actually an advantage. They expect us to behave like every other species they've tested. They expect us to fight in predictable ways. What if we do something completely unexpected? The room fell silent as people considered his words. President Morrison leaned forward in her chair. You're saying we use our weakness as a strength. We fight dirty, Peter nodded. I'm saying we fight like humans. Not like some advanced civilization that follows rules and protocols. We do whatever it takes to survive. Dr. Foster smiled for the first time since the meeting began. The Krell have probably crushed dozens of species who tried to match their technology. But they've never fought a species crazy enough to ignore the rules entirely. Admiral Coleman stood up and walked to the main display, bringing up a star map of human space. Then we need to prepare. Not for the battle they expect, but for the battle we're going to give them. We have mining stations, cargo ships, civilian vessels, construction drones. None of it is military hardware. Exactly, Peter said, which means they won't see it as a threat until it's too late. President Morrison made her decision. Send orders to every colony, every station, every ship. We have one day to turn our entire civilization into a weapon the Krell will never see coming. As the meeting ended and people rushed to their tasks, Daniel Harper's voice came through the speakers from deep space. He had been listening to the entire discussion through the communication link. Madam President, the Vanguard is returning to Earth at maximum speed. We want to be there for the fight. Linda Morrison looked at the speaker, pride and sadness mixing in her voice. Come home, Captain. Come home and help us show these aliens what it means to challenge humanity. Across human space, from Earth to Mars, from the asteroid belt to the outer colonies, millions of people received the same message. The Krell Dominion was coming. They thought humanity would be easy to crush. They thought humans would surrender or die quickly. They had made their biggest mistake. They had given humanity one day to prepare. One day was all humanity needed. The communication networks across human space burned with activity as the word spread. Every news station, every social media platform, every government channel carried the same message. Aliens existed. They had found humanity, and they were coming to judge whether humans deserved to live among the stars. On Earth, people gathered in the streets, looking up at the sky with a mixture of fear and anger. They had dreamed of meeting alien life for centuries. Now that dream had become a nightmare. The aliens were not coming in peace. They were coming to test humanity like a student taking an exam. Fail the test and humanity would be trapped in their own solar system forever. Resist the test and humanity would be wiped out completely. President Linda Morrison appeared on every screen across human space. Her face was calm, but her eyes showed the weight of what was coming. She had been elected to lead humanity into a new age of exploration and prosperity. Instead, she might be the president who watched her species get caged like animals. People of Earth and all human colonies, she began. By now you have heard the news. The Krell Dominion has given us an ultimatum. They will send a fleet to Earth. They will test our ability to defend ourselves. If we fail, we will never be allowed to leave our solar system again. She paused, letting the words sink in. Across the solar system, billions of people watched and waited. I will not lie to you. The Krell are far more advanced than we are. Their technology is beyond our current understanding. In a fair fight, we would lose. But I did not become president by accepting defeat. Humanity did not reach the stars by giving up when things looked impossible. Her voice grew stronger. The Krell think they know us. They scanned our ships. They read our files. They believe we are primitive and weak. They are right about one thing. Our technology is primitive compared to theirs. But they are wrong about everything else. We are not weak. We have never been weak, and we will show them exactly what happens when you threaten humanity. Admiral Jack Coleman stood in the command center of the Terran Defense Fleet, coordinating the largest mobilization in human history. Every military ship was being recalled to Earth. Every weapon system was being activated. But he knew it would not be enough. The Krell ship that had appeared to the Vanguard was more powerful than his entire fleet combined. And intelligence reports suggested they were sending 18 ships just like it. His aide, Commander Lisa Martin, brought him the latest reports. Admiral, we've confirmed the Krell fleet composition. 18 capital ships, each one capable of destroying a city with a single shot. They'll arrive in Earth orbit in 22 hours. Jack nodded grimly. What about the civilian mobilization? Are people cooperating? Lisa smiled despite the circumstances. You should see it, sir. Every colony is volunteering resources. Mining companies are donating their equipment. Cargo haulers are offering their ships. We've even got civilian pilots signing up faster than we can process them. Good. We're going to need every single one of them. On Mars, Peter Grant worked without sleep in the shipyards. His idea had been accepted by the president herself, and now he had to make it work. Around him, hundreds of engineers and technicians modified civilian cargo ships. These massive vessels were designed to carry supplies between colonies. They were slow, poorly armed, and never meant for combat. But Peter was not preparing them for conventional combat. He was turning them into the largest missiles humanity had ever built. Strip everything except the engines and navigation systems, he ordered his team. Remove the cargo bays, the living quarters, everything. I want these ships to be nothing but engines with guidance computers. A young technician named Sarah looked concerned. Sir, without the structural support from the cargo systems, these ships might break apart when we push the engines to maximum. Peter nodded. They only need to hold together long enough to reach the target. After that, it doesn't matter. Sarah understood. These ships were not coming back. They were one-way weapons, piloted by automated systems straight into the heart of the Krell fleet. At Luna Base on Earth's moon, Commander Amy Sullivan oversaw a different kind of preparation. The moon was home to massive mining operations that had been running for over a century. Thousands of mining drones worked around the clock, breaking apart lunar rock to extract valuable materials. Now those mining drones were being converted into weapons. Each drone gets packed with high-yield explosives, Amy explained to her team. Then we program them to target the Krell ships. They're small, fast, and we have thousands of them. One of her engineers, a man named Kevin Ross, raised a concern. Commander, these drones are designed to smash rocks, not attack military vessels. The Krell will destroy them easily. Amy smiled coldly. That's what they'll think. But we're not sending them in one at a time. We're sending them all at once. Thousands of small targets, all moving independently. All programmed to ram the Krell ships at maximum speed. Let's see how good their targeting systems are when they have to track that many objects simultaneously. In Earth's orbital space stations, technician Nicole Green worked on perhaps the strangest project of all. She was deploying millions of tiny reflective particles into carefully calculated orbits around key locations. To anyone watching, it looked like she was creating fields of space debris, worthless junk floating in the void. That was exactly what she wanted the Krell to think. These particles will scatter sensor beams, she explained to her assistant, a young woman named Rachel. When the Krell try to scan or target our positions, their sensors will get confused by all the reflections. It won't stop them, but it will slow them down. And in battle, every second counts. Rachel looked at the deployment plan on her screen. This is brilliant. It's like throwing sand in someone's eyes during a fight. Nicole nodded. Exactly. The Krell fight with precision and technology. We're going to fight with chaos and confusion. As preparations continued across human space, Dr. Helen Foster worked on understanding the enemy. She had studied the recordings from the Vanguard encounter hundreds of times, analyzing every word the Krell had spoken, every detail of their ship that the sensors had captured. She presented her findings to President Morrison in a private meeting. Madam President, I believe the Krell have a fatal weakness. Linda leaned forward. Tell me. Helen brought up a holographic display showing the patterns of previous Krell encounters with other species. They've done this 47 times before. Every single time they follow the same process. They announce themselves, they give an ultimatum, they send a fleet, and they evaluate the species based on their military response. We already know that, Linda said impatiently. Yes, but here's what we didn't know. Every species they've encountered has tried to fight them using conventional military tactics. Ship against ship, weapon against weapon. And every species has lost because the Krell have better technology. The Krell have won so many times using the same strategy that they've become predictable. Linda began to understand. They expect us to fight like a military force, with formations and tactics and strategy. Helen nodded excitedly. Exactly. They've studied our military. They know our weapons and our ships. They've calculated how we'll respond because that's how every other species has responded. But what if we don't fight like a military at all? We fight like desperate humans, Linda said quietly. We throw everything we have at them, military or not, in ways they can't predict. The Krell value order and efficiency, Helen continued. They've built their entire civilization around the idea that advanced technology and superior organization always win. They've never encountered a species crazy enough to fight with mining equipment and cargo ships. They've never faced an enemy that uses chaos as a weapon. Linda stood up and walked to the window, looking out at Earth below. Somewhere up there beyond the blue sky and white clouds, a Krell fleet was approaching. 18 ships filled with weapons and technology that could end human civilization in hours. But humanity was not going to make it easy for them. She turned back to Helen. Send your analysis to Admiral Coleman and to Peter Grant. Make sure everyone understands. We're not trying to beat the Krell at their own game. We're changing the game entirely. Captain Daniel Harper and the Vanguard arrived back at Earth with 6 hours to spare before the Krell fleet's arrival. His ship had pushed its engines beyond safe limits to make it home in time. Now he stood on the bridge, looking at Earth through the view screen, wondering if this would be the last time he saw his homeworld intact. His crew had volunteered to stay aboard for the battle, every single one of them. He had given them the option to evacuate to the surface, to be with their families for what might be humanity's last day. None of them had taken it. We're spacers, Captain, Karen Blake had told him. Space is where we belong. If humanity is going to fight for its right to the stars, we should be up here fighting too. Now the Vanguard sat in orbit alongside hundreds of other ships. Military vessels, cargo haulers, mining ships, passenger transports, even a few luxury yachts whose owners had volunteered them for the defense. It was the strangest fleet ever assembled. Admiral Coleman's voice came through on the command channel. All ships, this is Fleet Command. Krell vessels will drop out of faster-than-light travel in 5 hours. When they arrive, remember the plan. The moment arrived with terrifying precision. Across every sensor array in human space, the same readings appeared simultaneously. 18 massive energy signatures materialized in perfect geometric formation around Earth. The Krell had arrived exactly when they said they would. High Commander Genthor stood aboard his flagship, the largest vessel in the Krell war fleet. He had overseen 12 evaluations of primitive species during his long career. This would be his 13th. The number meant nothing to him. Every evaluation had ended the same way. The primitive species would either surrender immediately or make some pathetic attempt at resistance before accepting their place as a contained civilization. His second officer, a Krell named Vordan, analyzed the human defenses with the ship's advanced sensors. Commander, the humans have gathered approximately 400 vessels in orbit around their homeworld. Most appear to be military craft, though there are numerous civilian ships mixed in. Genthor made a sound that might have been laughter in a species capable of humor. They brought cargo haulers to a military evaluation. How desperate. Begin standard scanning protocols. Catalog their weapons and defensive capabilities. The 18 Krell ships activated their sensor arrays, sending powerful scanning beams across the orbital space around Earth. This was standard procedure. Understand the enemy's capabilities, calculate the optimal response, and execute with perfect efficiency. That was when the first unexpected thing happened. The sensor returns made no sense. The space around the human vessels was filled with millions of tiny reflective objects, each one bouncing the scanning beams in random directions. The Krell sensors, designed to pierce through any known countermeasure, suddenly could not get clean readings on anything. Vordan worked frantically at his console. Commander, our sensors are being disrupted. The humans have deployed some kind of reflective particle field. It's crude but effective. Genthor felt a flicker of something he had not experienced in centuries. Not fear exactly, but uncertainty. Adapt the scanning frequencies. Route around the interference. But before the Krell could adjust, the second wave of surprises hit them. From the dark side of Earth's moon, thousands of small objects launched simultaneously. They accelerated rapidly using electromagnetic catapults, ancient technology that the Krell had abandoned millennia ago. The objects were mining drones, simple machines designed to break apart rocks. Each drone was now packed with explosives and programmed with a single command. Ram the nearest Krell ship at maximum velocity. The drones swarmed across the space between the moon and the Krell fleet like angry insects. They did not fly in formation. They did not coordinate their attack. Each one simply picked the nearest target and accelerated as fast as its engines could manage. Genthor watched in disbelief as his sensors tried to track the incoming swarm. Defensive systems eliminate the incoming objects. The Krell ships activated their point defense weapons, powerful energy beams designed to destroy incoming missiles and fighters. The beams lanced out with perfect accuracy, destroying hundreds of the mining drones in seconds. But there were thousands of drones, and they were not flying in predictable patterns. They were moving erratically, chaotically, in ways that the Krell targeting computers had never been programmed to handle. The first drone impacted one of the Krell escort ships. The explosive charge detonated against the ship's shield, causing it to flare bright blue. The shield held. Then 3 more drones hit in rapid succession. The shield flickered. A 5th drone struck and the shield collapsed entirely. Shield failure on Vessel 7, Vordon reported, his voice showing the first hint of concern. The kinetic impacts are overwhelming the regeneration rate. Across the Krell fleet, the same thing was happening. The shields were designed to stop powerful weapons fired from other warships. They were not designed to handle thousands of small, fast-moving objects striking from every direction at once. It was like being attacked by a swarm of bees. Each individual sting was harmless, but thousands of stings together could kill. 2 Krell ships lost their shields completely. A third had its shield generator overload from the constant impacts, sending a cascade of power failures through its systems. Captain Daniel Harper watched from the bridge of the Vanguard as the mining drones did their work. He had not believed the plan would actually work. The Krell technology was so far beyond human understanding that it seemed impossible anything could hurt them. But Commander Amy Sullivan had been right. The Krell had never faced an attack like this because no advanced species would think to use mining equipment as weapons. It was crude, wasteful, and completely unpredictable. Phase 2. Admiral Coleman's voice came across all channels. All civilian cargo vessels, execute attack run now. From various positions around Earth's orbital space, the modified cargo haulers began their approach. These massive ships, stripped of everything except engines and guidance systems, accelerated toward the Krell fleet. Each one was loaded with every nuclear device that humanity could spare, along with electromagnetic pulse generators. The Krell saw them coming, of course. Their sensors, even disrupted by the reflective particles, could track objects that large. Genthor ordered his fleet to target the approaching cargo ships. Destroy those vessels before they reach firing range. The Krell warships opened fire with their main weapons, powerful energy beams that could cut through a mountain. The first cargo ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light as a Krell beam sliced through it. Then the second ship died. The third, but the 4th ship made it through. The automated guidance system steered it directly toward a Krell vessel that had lost its shields. At the last moment, the cargo ship detonated every nuclear device on board simultaneously. The explosion was visible from Earth's surface, a new sun blooming in orbit. The electromagnetic pulse that followed scrambled sensors and disrupted targeting systems across half the Krell fleet. The Krell ship that had been the target tumbled out of formation, its systems overloaded and failing. 3 more cargo ships made it through the defensive fire. 3 more massive explosions. 3 more Krell ships damaged or destroyed. Genthor stood frozen at his command station, unable to process what he was witnessing. In 12 previous evaluations, no species had ever damaged even 1 Krell ship. The humans had just crippled 4 vessels in the opening minutes of combat. These are not military tactics, he said, his voice filled with something that might have been respect or horror. This is chaos. This is madness. Vordon was working desperately to restore order to their sensor systems. Commander, we need to withdraw and regroup. Our formations are broken. Our shields are depleted. We cannot maintain tactical superiority in this environment. But before Genthor could issue orders, the third wave of humanity's attack began. From every human colony in the solar system, from hidden positions behind asteroids and moons, thousands of small craft appeared. They were not military fighters. They were personal shuttles, mining pods, transport vessels, even modified cargo containers with engines welded onto them. Each one was piloted by a human volunteer. Each one had a single purpose. Karen Blake had volunteered for this mission before Captain Harper could stop her. She sat in a small mining pod that had been fitted with enough explosives to damage a Krell ship if she could get close enough. Around her, thousands of other volunteers flew their makeshift attack craft toward the enemy. "This is crazy," she said to herself, gripping the control stick tightly. "This is absolutely crazy." But she kept flying. They all kept flying. Because this was what humans did. When faced with impossible odds, when confronted with enemies far stronger and more advanced, humans did not surrender. They found a way to fight back, no matter how crazy that fight might be. The Krell Point defense systems tried to engage the swarm of small craft. But there were too many targets moving too erratically. The targeting computers could not keep up. The Krell weapons were designed for precision strikes against specific targets. They were not designed to handle a chaotic swarm of hundreds of different types of craft, all moving independently. All piloted by humans who were not following any tactical doctrine or military formation. Karen's mining pod shook as a Krell energy beam passed close enough to scorch her hull. She jinked left, then right, flying in patterns she was making up as she went. Around her, other craft exploded as the Krell weapons found their marks. But for every craft destroyed, 10 more got through. She picked her target, a Krell ship that looked damaged from the earlier attacks. Its shields were flickering weakly. She aimed her mining pod directly at the ship's hull and pushed her engines to maximum. The old pod rattled and groaned, never designed for this kind of speed or stress. "For Earth," she whispered. Then she activated the detonation sequence and ejected from the pod in the small emergency capsule. The mining pod struck the Krell ship's weakened shield and detonated. The explosion was small compared to the nuclear blasts from the cargo haulers, but it was focused and placed perfectly. The shield collapsed completely, and debris from the explosion peppered the Krell ship's hull. Across the battlefield, hundreds of similar attacks were happening simultaneously. The Krell fleet, which had arrived in perfect formation with overwhelming firepower, was now scattered and confused. The silence after the battle was almost worse than the fighting itself. Captain Daniel Harper stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, staring at the 3 disabled Krell ships floating in Earth's orbit. Around them, the wreckage of human vessels drifted in the void, each piece representing someone who had died defending their species. Commander Greg Patterson was compiling the casualty reports. His hands shook slightly as he read the numbers. "Captain, we lost 347 craft in the battle. Most were the small volunteer ships. We're still trying to identify all the pilots." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. 347 people had died in less than an hour. They had climbed into mining pods and cargo containers and personal shuttles, knowing they probably would not come back. And they had done it anyway because the alternative was watching humanity get caged forever. "What about Lieutenant Blake?" he asked quietly. Greg checked his screen. "She ejected successfully. A rescue ship picked her up 20 minutes ago. She's alive, Captain." Daniel let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. At least Karen had made it. At least some of them had made it. Admiral Jack Coleman's voice came through on the command channel, addressing all ships. "All vessels stand down from combat alert. Begin rescue operations for any survivors. Medical ships prioritize the wounded, and someone figure out what we're going to do with 3 Krell warships that just surrendered to us." On Earth, President Linda Morrison sat in her office, watching the news feeds from around the world. The battle had been broadcast live across every channel. Billions of people had watched as humanity's desperate, chaotic defense had somehow defeated the most advanced military fleet in known space. The reactions were mixed. Some people celebrated in the streets, cheering and crying with relief. Others mourned the dead, gathering in parks and churches to honor those who had sacrificed everything. And some simply sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. Dr. Helen Foster entered the president's office without knocking. She looked exhausted but excited. Madam President, we need to talk about the captured Krell ships. Linda gestured to a chair. Sit down before you fall down, Helen. What have you learned? Helen pulled up a holographic display showing scans of the disabled Krell vessels. These ships are technological marvels. Each one contains systems and materials that are centuries beyond our current capabilities. If we can study them, if we can understand even a fraction of their technology, it would advance human science by generations. You want to take them apart and learn from them, Linda said. Yes. But there's more. We've been receiving transmissions from inside the ships. The Krell crews are still alive. They're requesting to speak with human leadership. Linda felt a surge of cold anger. The same beings who threatened to exterminate us if we resisted their judgment now want to talk? Helen nodded. I know. But we should hear what they have to say. Knowledge is power, Madam President. Even knowledge of our enemies. 2 hours later, a communication link was established between Earth and one of the captured Krell ships. The image that appeared on the screen was alien in ways that made Linda's mind hurt. The Krell did not have a body in any sense she understood. It was a being of crystalline structures and flowing energy, contained within what looked like a suit of living metal. The Krell identified itself as Vordan, second officer of the defeated fleet. Its voice came through the translation system, sounding less mechanical than before. There was emotion in it now. Fear, perhaps, or respect. Human leader, Vordan began. I speak for the crew of the 3 vessels you have captured. We surrender completely and unconditionally. Linda kept her voice cold and formal. Your commander Zenthor abandoned you. He fled with the rest of your fleet. Why should we accept your surrender instead of destroying your ships? Because we have information you need, Vordan replied. And because we wish to offer you something the Krell Dominion has never offered any species before. Understanding. Helen leaned forward, intrigued despite herself. Explain. Vordan's crystalline form shifted, a gesture that might have been equivalent to a human taking a deep breath. The Krell Dominion has existed for 50,000 of your years. In that time, we have encountered hundreds of developing species. We have tested 47 of them using the evaluation process you just experienced. Every single one either surrendered immediately or was destroyed in the testing. You are the first species to ever defeat a Krell fleet. You underestimated us, Linda said flatly. Yes, but not in the way you think. We did not underestimate your courage or your determination. We underestimated your willingness to abandon all logic and reason in pursuit of victory. Your species does not fight like any other we have encountered. You do not seek optimal solutions. You seek impossible solutions and then make them work through sheer force of will. Helen spoke up. You're saying our irrationality is what defeated you. Not irrationality, adaptability, creativity, the ability to see a mining drone and imagine it as a weapon, the ability to turn civilian cargo ships into missiles, the ability to coordinate thousands of individuals without rigid command structures or tactical doctrine. These are not traits common among advanced species. Linda stood and walked closer to the screen. What happens now? Your commander fled, but he's still out there. The rest of the Krell Dominion still exists. Are they going to come back with more ships? Vordan's form dimmed slightly. That is what I needed to tell you. High Commander Zenthor is not returning to Krell space. He is traveling to the Dominion capital with a message. A message about you. What message? That humanity is too dangerous to be contained. That your species will never stop expanding, never stop fighting, never accept any limitation placed upon you. That the Krell made a catastrophic error in challenging you. The room fell silent as the implication sank in. Admiral Coleman, who had joined the conversation from his command ship, spoke carefully. You're saying the Krell are afraid of us now? Terrified, Vordan confirmed. In 50,000 years, the Krell have never retreated from battle. We have never lost ships to a species we deemed primitive. You have shattered our understanding of how power works in this galaxy, and that makes you the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. Over the next 3 days, more information came through various channels. The Krell Dominion was in chaos. The 12 species that had formed the coalition were arguing among themselves about what to do about humanity. Some wanted to gather a massive fleet and destroy Earth before humans could become a greater threat. Others wanted to open peaceful relations immediately, hoping to learn from humanity rather than fight them. But the most significant faction wanted to do something unprecedented in Krell history. They wanted to withdraw from this entire sector of space and leave humanity alone. Peter Grant, the young engineer whose ideas had helped win the battle, presented his analysis to President Morrison. "They're afraid we'll figure out their technology and use it against them. They're afraid that if they attack us again, we'll find some new crazy way to fight back. They've realized that humanity doesn't play by the rules they understand." Linda looked at the reports spread across her desk: casualty lists, damage assessments, intelligence briefs about Krell movements. "So we won. But at what cost?" Helen Foster, who had been working around the clock studying the captured Krell ships, entered with new information. "Madam President, you need to see this. We found something in the Krell databases, records of the other species they've evaluated and contained." The holographic display showed star maps with dozens of systems marked in red. Each one represented a species that had been trapped in their home system by Krell weapons platforms. Species that had been judged unworthy of joining the galactic community and locked away like prisoners. "These species are still there," Helen said. "Still trapped. Still unable to explore space beyond their own solar system. Some of them have been contained for thousands of years." Linda understood immediately. "We could free them. We have 3 Krell ships with access to their systems. We could locate the containment platforms and disable them. It would make the Krell even angrier," Admiral Coleman warned. "They might decide that we're too much of a threat and attack with everything they have. Or," Peter Grant said slowly, "they might decide that we're not worth fighting at all. That we're too unpredictable, too dangerous, too willing to do whatever it takes to win. They've ruled through fear and intimidation for 50,000 years. Maybe it's time someone intimidated them instead." The decision was made. Using the data from the captured Krell ships, humanity began sending expeditions to the systems where other species had been contained. The Krell containment platforms were sophisticated, but they were also automated and following predictable patterns. Human engineers who had just proven they could turn mining equipment into weapons had no trouble figuring out how to disable alien technology. One by one, the imprisoned species were freed. Some had been trapped for so long they had forgotten they had ever traveled in space. Others had maintained their technology and their hope, waiting for the day they might escape. All of them learned the same thing. 6 months passed after the battle that changed everything. The Krell Dominion, which had ruled its sector of space for 50,000 years, was falling apart. The 12 species that had formed the coalition were no longer working together. Some had withdrawn completely to their home systems. Others had sent diplomatic missions to Earth, seeking to understand the humans who had accomplished the impossible. President Linda Morrison stood in what was now called the Embassy District, a new section of Geneva where alien species had established official contact with humanity. She was meeting with the ambassador from the Verath, one of the species that had been part of the Krell Dominion. The Verath ambassador was a tall being covered in scales that shifted colors depending on its mood. Currently, the scales showed patterns of blue and green, which human translators had learned meant respect and curiosity. "President Morrison," the ambassador began, speaking through a translation device. "My people have sent me to ask you a question. How did you know your plan would work?" Linda smiled slightly. "We didn't. We had no idea if anything we tried would even damage your ships. But we knew that if we fought the way you expected us to fight, we would lose. So we did everything unexpected. The mining drones, the cargo ships filled with nuclear devices, the swarm of civilian craft. These are not military tactics, so no, they're not. They're desperate tactics. They're what happens when you threaten a species that has nowhere left to run." The Verath scale shifted to purple, which meant deep thought. The Krell believed that advanced technology always defeated primitive technology. They believed that order always defeated chaos. You proved them wrong. We proved that there's more to survival than having the best weapons. Sometimes you need the will to use whatever you have in ways no one expects. In orbit around Earth, the 3 captured Krell ships were being studied by teams of human scientists. Dr. Helen Foster led the research effort, and what they were discovering was changing everything humanity knew about physics, energy, and the nature of space itself. She gave a presentation to President Morrison and the senior leadership about their findings. "These ships use something the Krell call quantum fold drives. They don't actually move through space. They fold space around themselves. That's how they can travel faster than light without experiencing time dilation." Admiral Jack Coleman leaned forward. "Can we build drives like that?" Helen shook her head. "Not yet. Maybe not for decades. The materials required don't exist naturally. They have to be manufactured using processes we don't fully understand. But we're learning. Every day we understand more. The Krell thought keeping us trapped in our solar system would stop us from advancing. Instead, by attacking us, they gave us access to their technology. Ironic, Linda said. They created the very thing they feared. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the effects of humanity's victory continued to spread. The species that had been freed from Krell containment were exploring space again, rediscovering what it meant to be free. Many of them sent messages to Earth, thanking humanity for what they had done. But not everyone was grateful. Some species saw humanity's actions as reckless and dangerous. They worried that humans were too aggressive, too willing to fight, too unpredictable. A coalition of 5 species sent a formal warning to Earth, demanding that humanity agree to certain restrictions on their expansion and military development. Peter Grant, who had been promoted to Director of Advanced Defense Projects, read the warning with a mixture of amusement and annoyance. They want us to promise not to develop certain weapons. They want us to agree to stay out of their territory. They want us to submit to inspections of our military facilities. Linda looked at the document. They're trying to do to us what the Krell tried to do. Control us through fear and limitations. What should we tell them? Linda considered carefully. We tell them the truth. Humanity has no interest in conquering or threatening anyone. We want to explore, to learn, to build peaceful relations with other species. But we will never again accept anyone telling us where we can go or what we can do. We fought for our freedom. We won't surrender it to anyone, no matter how politely they ask. The response Linda sent was carefully worded but firm. Humanity would agree to reasonable treaties and mutual defense pacts. They would respect the territory of species that requested it. But they would not accept any authority claiming the right to restrict human development or expansion. The days of older species dictating terms to younger ones were over. The response created controversy across the galaxy. Some species saw it as arrogant. Others saw it as refreshing. But everyone understood the underlying message. Humanity was not going to be pushed around. Captain Daniel Harper returned to deep space exploration, but the Vanguard was no longer alone. It was now accompanied by ships from 6 different species, all of whom had chosen to work with humanity rather than against them. Karen Blake served as the diplomatic liaison, helping to coordinate between the different crews. One evening, Daniel found her in the observation lounge, looking out at the stars. "Thinking about the battle?" he asked. She nodded. "Sometimes I still can't believe we survived. That any of us survived. When I was flying that mining pod toward the Krell ship, I was certain I was going to die. But you did it anyway. We all did. Because the alternative was worse than death. The alternative was living in a cage, never knowing what else was out there among the stars." Daniel sat beside her. "The galaxy is different now. The Krell are scattered. The old order is breaking down. Some species see us as heroes. Others see us as a threat. What do you see when you look at humanity now?" Karen asked. Daniel thought about it. "I see a species that refuses to give up. That finds a way forward even when there seems to be no path. That fights with whatever tools they have, even if those tools are just mining drones and cargo ships. We're not the most advanced species. We're not the strongest or the smartest, but we might be the most stubborn. And the most creative," Karen added. "Don't forget creative, stubborn and creative. That's a dangerous combination. For anyone who threatens us, yes." Back on Earth, in a secure facility deep underground, Vordan the Krell officer met with human researchers regularly. He had chosen to remain with humanity rather than return to his people. When asked why, his answer had been simple. "Because I want to understand you. Because in 50,000 years of Krell history, nothing has fascinated my people more than humanity. And because I believe the future belongs to species that can adapt, not species that rely on ancient dominance." Vordan had become an invaluable source of information about galactic politics, technology, and history. But more than that, he had become something unexpected. A friend, Dr. Helen Foster, worked with him almost daily, and she had come to respect the Krell's intellect and his willingness to question everything his species had believed for millennia. "Vordan, I have a question. Do you think the Krell will ever recover from what happened?" The crystalline being dimmed thoughtfully. "Recover? Yes, eventually. My species is ancient and resilient. But will we ever again believe we are the ultimate authority in the galaxy? No, humanity broke that belief forever, and perhaps that is good. Perhaps we had become too certain, too rigid, too convinced of our superiority. What will you do now? I will continue to study humans, to learn from you. And perhaps when enough time has passed, I will return to my people and teach them what I have learned. That true power does not come from having the best technology or the strongest weapons. It comes from the ability to adapt, to think differently, to do whatever is necessary to survive. 1 year after the battle, President Linda Morrison gave a speech that was broadcast not just across human space, but to every species in the galaxy that would receive it. She stood before the newly constructed Galactic Relations Building, with the flags of 20 different species flying behind her. 1 year ago, an advanced species challenged humanity. They told us we were primitive. They told us we were weak. They told us we would either submit to their judgment or be destroyed. Today, that species no longer exists as it once did, not because we destroyed them, but because we showed them something they had never seen before. We showed them that advancement is not just about technology. It's about the will to survive, the creativity to find new solutions, the courage to fight when fighting seems impossible. She paused, letting her words sink in across light years of space. Humanity does not seek to replace the Krell as the dominant power in this galaxy. We do not want to rule anyone. We want to explore. We want to learn. We want to build relationships with other species based on mutual respect, not fear and intimidation. But let this be clear to any species watching. We will never accept being caged. We will never accept limitations placed on us by those who think they know better. We will never stop exploring, growing, and pushing forward into the unknown. The old order of the galaxy is gone, an order where ancient species dictated terms to younger ones, where advancement in technology meant the right to control others. That order died when the Krell challenged humanity and lost. The new order, whatever it becomes, will be built on different principles. Cooperation instead of domination. Creativity instead of rigid hierarchy. Freedom instead of control. 2.